I'm especially excited to welcome everyone to the University of Miami Gallery here at the Chapel. My name is Cardoso. I'm the gallery manager and curator. This gallery marks a brand new chapter for the Department of Art and Art History. We're housed in this beautifully historic building, and it's conceived for space for exhibitions, conversation, and community. The chapel itself is the oldest part of the complex, dating back to 1948. It's really special to see this historic space reimagined for contemporary art. And it feels really especially meaningful to have William here and share his work together. So tonight, rather than having a formal lecture, we thought, let's have a conversation. So if you have questions, feel free to jump in along the way. We want to make this as interactive as possible. Thank you. I think I should introduce you first. And I brought notes because I also have questions for William. William Osorio is a Cuban-born artist from Medellin, Cuba, based in Miami, working outside tradition and academic frameworks. He has developed a rigorous research-driven studio practice focused on experimentation and critical inquiry. His large-scale paintings merge gestural configuration, vivid chromatic structures, and their material processes, exploring themes of identity, displacement, like between cultures. He's exhibited internationally with solo shows at venues like Adrian Simon Gallery in Brussels and Paris and LNS here in Miami. His work has been presented in fairs such as Expo Chicago and Untitled Miami Beach. He is also the recipient of the Salvadoran Culture Consortium Award in 2023. He's won an Ellie's Creator Award in 2022. And his work is held in major collections in museums in Miami, one being the Paris Art Museum, Miami, and the Louvre Art Museum.
Just want to say thank you to all of you for being here, making the time, the daylight today, and to Billy and to Nathan and to all other partners for trusting the work and allowing me to see in such a beautiful place. Um, yes, thank you Billy for the introductions. As she said, the idea is not to do a formal artist talk interview. We are gonna be opening for you guys and then ask a question at the end. I suppose you're gonna make some questions and I'm going to answer along the way. You guys can as well interpret.
Thought it might be a good way to start with the way we met, because that's how the exhibition came to be. I met William. I visited his studio when he was in residence with the Museum of Art and Design in Miami, through Miami-Dade College. I went to his studio. I was there filming an episode for a series that I created called CR Miami, where I interview local Miami artists and just learn about their creative process, their journey, um, just the materials that they use, and just wanted to get the backstory. And I had already been a fan of William's work. It was especially exciting because he was there working on a brand new body of work. Some of the pieces are here now. And learning, I have to say, I went in there as a fan of his work and I left an even bigger fan. And that's something really special that happens with the series, that you really get to know the artist, the material he works with, the books they're reading, their references they use in their work and their inspirations. And any preconceived notions you have about an artist just disappears. And when I left that studio that day, I told my husband, if I go back to curating independently again, I want to leave. Cut to a few months later, he messaged me like, hey, I'm interested in doing a show. Wow. It just so happened. And that's when I knew that we were aligned and the exhibition was really, really going to happen. So we spoke months after that, just going over just his just the series that he's done several, and it's a combination of 4 years. And it's not just one series here, it is multiple. So we met at the space, just immediately laid out the work, and they had an idea in mind for it. So that has been how about the body of work, the different series you have here, because they were done in several residencies.
Yes, so we had that connection when Billy came to the studio. The first thing I asked was how long I was gonna take for the video, and she told me 1 hour. Which is 1 hour speaking with a camera in front of you, and when we did more than an hour in just one take, so we didn't stop. Uh, the idea was for him to ask a question, and I started conversing about the work, and we spoke for almost 2 hours. And that's when I realized that there was something legit that she wanted us to do it, and she was interested. I came to this space, and this space is extremely beautiful. It has something to it. Maybe related to the history of the space, there is a spiritual element to the architecture that I thought speaks to the type of work that I do. A lot of the work that we selected has to do with the idea of contemplation in everyday life and silence and uh, that creative space that develops in that setting, type of settings. So when I came, I saw these three walls back here, where I believe was the artifact of the chapel at some point. I knew that that painting would fit perfectly there. And that painting is originally one painting, just being exhibited one time for the Solidarity Consortium in 2023. And it's one painting in 300. But when I saw this, I thought about how the space invited to the idea of the triptych, the tradition in religious painting and how it would work. So uh, the exhibition is titled Contra, and it brings together painting from the last 4 years, several artists work. Each series of painting, they begin with a different experience. They all explore the idea that ordinary places, objects, and material have the possibility of becoming carriers of meanings. And so they all share with us the same ground, but they experience in different ways. There are paintings here about my experience of fatherhood, about migration, about contemplation and silence, about Caribbean identity, painting all of those words come out of the same person. So this is like that idea of the same ground being able to hold different experiences, and that's how we move through life. I'm always interested in how memories could be so different of one specific event when shared for like one more than one person. And it has to do with the superior. Not only the experience and into a big dialogue with us.
So one thing I thought of immediately when we were selecting the work is how it would speak to the architecture of the space. But when you have it in the space as a chapel setting, to me, I immediately connected religious iconography and sacred paintings to many of the works. And I immediately asked William, like, was this a direct reference? And he said, no, it's not, I'm not really religious.
But I think that painting or the context in which a conversation or painting we find ourselves changes completely the meaning of what a painting can be. And I understand why this type of architecture adds to the work of art that level of spirituality. And I'm interested in religious, but from the cultural, visual language sense, not as a statement of faith. Uh, and I'm aware of how religion has shaped painting throughout the century. And if I use those references, are because those references continue to be useful to talk about contemporary values like migration, identity, belonging. So there are in religious symbols, the one that appears in the benefactor of the apple. It is a reference to a bread of a light painting by Daniel Rossetti, Gabriel Rossetti, Dante Gabriel Rossetti, the Rossetti painting. And so you have the iconography of the apple, which is speak about origin, but also speak about exile. It's the original in the religious religion. So those methods continue to shed light into contemporary iconography and painting. In that sense, religions continue to be useful for artists as a painter, you have to be aware of the connection and how link has been to our history.
Especially with the triptych. You find these triptychs in many churches and cathedrals, an altarpiece from the Gothic period on. One that came to mind immediately when I saw it, I thought of Ino, the Finnish painter. And it's like, oh, that does look so great there. It's absolutely perfect. But then there was others. Is the depiction of a mother and child who have this really sacred moments with the mother holding her baby. And it's one of my favorite pieces. I truly love one of my favorites is Mama's Campagnano. And you have this figure in this chair, and I immediately thought of Christ in the throne, Majesty paintings, where you have the Blessed Hand. And a lot of those pictures are seen religious figures and prophets. And I thought, I'm like, oh my gosh, there is something here. But when you were working on your series, as we did the studio visit and it was unfolding, now looking at it in this space, have you changed?
I, if it is there, I'm sure it is there, but because I'm part of a lineage of painters and I belong to what's a history, it is impossible not to paint. Uh, as a purely painter today, I have the weight of all that history and all of the reference that you see in the work. Uh, Also, the composition that you see, the object, the chair, the color, these are things that were used also in a time when religious was the only way of looking at the world and understanding the world. So it's almost it's very difficult to divorce visually those ideas from what I'm doing today. I think I owe more in a conscious way to art history. A lot of the work that I do, I try to establish a dialogue with art history. Uh, for example, in the painting that you mentioned, the title is Mamá, ellos son de la loma, Renacata en el llano. The translation would be like, modern they are from the countryside, but they sing in the city. And it is a line from a song by el,
Dios vestidos.
it's a Cuban band from the 1920s. And this idea, there is a transition there of Cuban identity independent from Spain in the 19th century being born in the countryside. So that's the foundation, the origin of Cuban identity, and then you come to the city, you come to the jungle. This is what also people of colors, when people of colors at that type of identity development would take place in a place like the countryside, and then bring that to the city to the modern reality. That's what the lyrics says. Tribal is the name of the month. Just came back to me. Um, and this painting specifically is based on folk. It's a biography of Cuban intellectuals from the early days of the revolution that suffered ostracism. They went through exile. Most of the Bible they were not published anymore. But this is a Severus Artwin. Severus Artwin was a Cuban poet invited as a book with lyric, the name of the lyric, the title, and he was exiled in France. And The painting is based on a series of photos of him in the 1970s. He was not able to return to Cuba later. And it is interesting because he was also also philosophy. His work is fiction about identity, but he was in touch with the group of the structuralists, was a friend of Roland Barthes. He was involved in that level. He had a radio station in the 60s and friends with the Spanish radio. So this painting of an intellectual in which I bring myself into the composition with the idea of collapsing history. So this is the new contemporary Cuban art facing in a different way. Same situation that accumulated the intellectual face at the beginning of the revolution. It was able to return to Cuba. I don't know if that's my case, but I want to take a risk. But today I don't even have, I think Cuba to face a lack of freedom of speech and freely general to develop intellectually and be intellectually honest, which is a very difficult thing to do when there is this omnipresent uh, level of power and level of society. And the painting is also a reference to the Baroque identity of the island. It's painted on a carpet, uh, a material that allows for that in the material, when you a painting like this, the canvas it speaks onto the frame. So I was talking about frame here, and the carpet allows me to have the material present the concept. When I'm doing this, I'm not only in the picture, talking about freedom on the painting, but the material itself is free. So I'm removing the canvas from the stretcher pad. And the carpet has a structure itself, it's flexible, it moves, it rolls. Uh, and it has that type of freedom and flexibility in the work that I was hoping that I hope to have as an artist and that a person like Severus we was hoping to have a relationship to his relation to Cuba and get it again. So the material, one of the things that I'm looking for in a painting like this and the use of the character is that the character allows for the concept to be embedded into the material. The material is already free from the tradition of painting because of the way it's
Daniel President.
you can ask a question at any time. We don't have to.
First of all, I think Rocco Chapel, so I'm not thinking anything religious, but definitely spiritual. But I want to know about the water on the triptych. Please tell me what is going on with the materials and what you're depicting. Because it looks like there's some rapids. Like I want to know the story.
Yeah, no, maybe to be honest, that really is one like this river I want to say. And that is the opening line of the chapter, the ferryman, I don't know, by Herman Hesse Siddhartha, which is a fictional biography of Siddhartha Gautama, the Buddha. And so the ones of the ferryman, after Buddha lost all his journey, he returns and he's about to cross the same river that he has passed. And in the book, he finds the ferryman again. And when he passed by here, he has changed. There has been a change in him. And the ferryman noticed the change. So the river became easy. I have a when you ask about a question, that's the note that I have right here. So I'm going to be looking at the note as I tell you this. The river became a way of thinking about the Caribbean identity, whose history is inseparable from one. And the moment between a moment in life in which you find a place where you choose to remain. So this is me saying by this river I want to stay. So in the composition you have my partner and myself. This is our life pre-parenthood and motherhood. This is a painting from a few years ago. Um, and The painting is divided again the three panels because the space divided these divisions because we mentioned that's the first thing that came to mind when I saw the space. I thought the rock chapter right away and the spiritual element of the space. Not the religious element, it's about contemplation, the being there. Um, so the space between the panels become a part of the world. Suggest the distance, separation, and the possibility of reconnection or connection, because we don't know if this painting was united somehow. There are two historical references in the painting. The first one is Michelangelo creation of fragment in the 16th chapter. Uh, the separation becomes as meaningful as a contact. The separation between self, now self and island become like sort of archipelago. And so you are there within the same space, but with some individuality. You are allowed to create something new, but you are also affected to create yourself, as a human being. And the second, as I mentioned before, is the pre-Raphaelite tradition, especially Rossetti's use of the arrow as a symbol of Messiah and in the religious tradition. The image resonates with the history of the Caribbean in my own experience of exile. That's the all that I have about the painting, but I can tell you a little bit how the composition came about. And that's what the question was. Um, so I knew that I wanted to make a painting about a women, and it had to be big, and it had to convey this idea that I was thinking about. Uh, Most of the work that you see here comes from collage. I don't work from I work from photos, but I don't work from one photo. We went to the water and we went to Key Biscayne. But in Key Biscayne, the water is very light and there's water movement. We took the photos of Key Biscayne and then we went to the Everglades to take the other the area on top. We went to the Everglades to the photo. Actually, that day we also took the photo for the big painting below in the Everglades as well. And that painting was created, that composition was created at many photos of the day, maybe 20 photos. And when you start to look at the painting, you start to see things that they are hard to understand, that they don't add up. The painting is a realistic painting, you could say, but there are things that break from reality. Because the thing as you see it doesn't exist. It was created by me. So I had to use that water keep scale to create this space of depth and movement and color that because it wasn't painted from the photo, it was painted from my mind. And there is a lot of movement and texture, get closer, make it, you see all of that. You see of my wife's legs, she's under water, but the legs are visible. It's not my case. Every part of my body that is in the water is not visible anymore. And that doesn't make any sense there. That's just because I really love that part of it, like when you move, because that was showing me a different photo. So what I did was I got that and integrated. This is just the artist enjoying painting, as an activity that was extremely enjoyable and fun to do. And the other thing is the horizon. So you have the water, and then this is straight line, real lines, they don't appear like that in nature. Uh, so this the space of fiction, what I'm creating there, using nature as a reference, but created from myself, breaking with the laws of nature, if you will. And then you have the grass, and I have divided the composition in a way that is totally strange. It doesn't tend to be like that. You normally have the grass and then you have water and water connects with the sky. And here I reverse it, did it the opposite way. Um, yeah, so the painting is, there is all this movement that I did use the movement that the water is getting out, but what I did was I amplified that. I made it real in a sense. Yeah.
Any other questions?
Like in a family in Cuba that was really, they were involved in music. Uh, I don't know how pandemic. I have no memory of being uh, growing up in Cuba was like growing up in the 1940s. Like three days you on the road, you skate to school if you go into a river, things like that. But I'm also like to draw. Like I used to draw some. I was a kid in school that could draw cartoons. And no, especially better than anybody else. I don't believe in the idea of talent as these things that come from heaven. I have more very happy. And just practice and practice and practice. And one thing that I do believe more than the best, learning how to paint, it is not easy. But the most difficult part is learning how to see. When you have developed the skill of seeing and looking at things in the world, everything else becomes easier. Painting is practice, is repetition, is physical labor. You become a better painter by painting. Uh, a skill can only capture what perception has already discovered. And I have my grandfather was saying like that. He opened my eyes since I was a little kid. Uh, he was a professor, math professor, mathematician. He loved to read. We didn't have any art in the house. We didn't have a museum in the city that I grew up. But we had these Paco prints that I didn't realize that was a real painting until later. We had a book in the house. It was like about, and yeah, in cultural life, growing up in Cuba in the 90s was, you were very involved. You could go to a baseball game and then the same day you go see a opera at the theater. At least when I grew up in Cuba, it was like that. At least now. But culture wasn't very accessible since I was a little kid. I used to go, they call it Cuba Casa de la Cultura. So the cultural house on the city, there is this place where the kids go and they paint. And, uh, you have a professor that can develop some skills. And at some point, I decided that I wanted to do it. And I went to one school in Cuba. So the technical aspect of art starts very early in Cuba. As if you're an dancer of a musician, uh, because these are the schools that, you know, later on in your life, you have developed intellectually when you go to college. But by then, you already know paper. So I was lucky in that sense that the little education that I got in Cuba uh, gave me the tools. They taught me the technical. It wasn't like an academy. And I interrupted my education. I came to America and I didn't finish it. But that was all my art education. And I've been doing this for 20 years, non-stop. And as Billy mentioned, I have developed my practice outside of academia. I've been working, I've been represented by Evidence Gallery for about 10 years. Uh, and I began exhibiting my work before I came to Miami, Boston. I lived in Boston. When we left Cuba, we went to Boston. I wasn't very involved in the art scene there. So I was always involved in art. Like I said, I don't have memory of being doing this. It's all I felt. Yeah.
Something that draws me into work is the use of reclaimed materials, especially the clothing, because there's so much memory and history in clothing. Um, how do you how do you decide what materials to use and how do you find the clothing?
Well, at some point, when I realized textile was going to be a part of my practice, I stopped throwing things away. uh, and so it became part of my life. Instead of taking things to goodwill, I will go through it and look at things based on colors and patterns. things that I thought I could use in the future and I keep it for myself. Um, I was talking to Nathan earlier that so when my wife is not allowed dress, I could make dress. And I kept the dress for 5 years. And I do that. So at the beginning of the next side of the war, we have to do this painting. The Bible put that this painting belongs to, uh, it's called the Pablo de Volcanos. And that painting is part of a body of work that was painted with the Ellis Creators Award. And it's based on the journey of a group of Cubans that left the island and flew to Nicaragua and then walked all the way to the American movement. This specific part of the work is based in the experience of that group. Uh, the body of the work also depicts and talks about the experience of 500,000 Cubans who did send journeying. This is just so much that is close to me. It allowed me to use their story and the force that they took during the trip to create the paintings. And when they arrived in America, I have a couple of family members that came like that and a few friends. And I part of the project was to interview with them and where I wanted to collaborate with them with photos and take the photos. And at some point they also offered the things that they had left. And they gave me the pudding and the funny part that you see there is uh, what they had to ask for and the personal information and the medicine that they had to take. And there is also the plastic bag. The plastic bags are not the ones from the trip, but it's a reference to the fragility of that material, of that object that they were using to have the few material things that they have left. One of the things about my lady is that for example, for us Cubans that we don't plan with going back, you leave and everything stays behind. And sometimes all you take is photos, photo albums of family and notebooks. When I came from you, I came with 27 books that are the complete works of Jose Martin. They were like it's my grandfather, and my grandfather left that to me. I brought that from Cuba, which is crazy. To come to America with that back with 27 other books. I have that. I have had for 20 years, and my grandfather had for 50 or 60. And, and those are the little things that they could they go from family to family. These are like there is this object from Taino culture called the semi. A semi was a little sculpture made out of bones or stone or clay, and they embody the spirit of the people that have lived before. And it was a way of having the spirit of them with you. And one of the things that I am interested about it with the integration of materials and other things is about having the object that becomes a family semi. Semi CEMI. Um, and I've been researching about that because I'm thinking about that I feel what can become a family semi. What do you have that have been your family for a long time? It can be anything. It can be anything. For me, that those books. For some of these people, objects like this represented, the fraction of the discontinuity in their identity, the migration means for most people. And yeah, so this was the beginning of the integration of the actual textile, which began with African clothing and garment of people did that journey. And from there, I went to that painting, which has already my clothes, and the corner what I'm doing now already have a bank of it's part of my palette, pieces of things that I have collected. And sometimes it's not the whole thing, sometimes it's just cut a piece of a shell and put it on the floor. They become one of the palette.
Also, Los Hermanos. Can you talk a little bit about that one? Because I do think they speed.
Yeah, so this painting came from the same body of work that I painted back there, and the painting and the row. and they belong to a body to an exhibition. We had the Heritage Gallery called Only Silence here. So that one exhibition was about, I will somewhere arrive to this kind of right? So I don't know to speak about that. Uh, the exhibition was about the idea of leisure and not the opposite of productivity as we see it today. Um, Ancient Greeks thought of the water issue for them meant school. So it is interesting how today leisure is an idle Sunday afternoon watching a football game, drinking beer, and nothing, scrolling the phone. At some point, leisure had a different significance, which was a space for creation and contemplation, intellectual development. So that's the foundation of culture happens around the fire, in the dance, in it doesn't happen in the construction of a building. It happens in the party that is happening, taking place in the building after it's constructed. That is where the connections are made. And for the Greeks, it was like that. So they thought of nature as that activity, as that intellectual creative activity. And for me as a painter, it's more into I feel that again, practice is extremely important and productive. We are as create culture, question culture, and other ones are able to foresee where culture is going to go. And so I selected a group of images that spoke to me in that sense. And this painting is called Two Brothers of the Eve, Los Hermanos and la Víctora. It is a painting of my brother and myself based on a photo taken the night before I left Cuba. And so this was the last time I saw my brother and my family for a long time. And it was during a party. Like one of those Latin parties that at some point everybody's like, all the kids were taking the shirt off. So this is what was there at that point. But it was also the end of my life in Cuba for me. And the painting, it's probably the most professional painting of the show. Uh, it's the one that I have that there is a sense of things things with time because the time went by and things almost really here. It's here and for a long time. I couldn't make that painting. Everything was seven. I couldn't make it before. And rather that painting now because of my family who we are building. But that painting has that element of separation between loved ones and also the longing for them. That idea of of China. It was a teenager. My brother was a little bit. We didn't see him for a long time. When I saw him again, he was already the size that he became in the phone next to him. So it's that break with time, with home, and it's about belonging and exile. Yeah, there is always the desire and the idea of returning to somehow.
Any other questions? Well, I'm from one who's really fascinated with the artist practice, much obsessed with it. So I want to know more about yours. How do you ever readjust as you go along? Do you pause and then they continue, or when you're working on a specific piece? Do you ever reevaluate and go back to the drawing board, or you know pretty much? This is just
That's a good question because that is a question about when just about. And it is, I mean, for those who paint, you must know that painting is a very enjoyable activity. And that is one of its greatest gift, but it's also a danger. Because we enjoy it, we are tending to keep going. And as I mentioned before, I believe the most important skill that a painter has to develop is not learning how to paint, but learning how to see. And when you see, the painting, you stop. If you continue to work on painting after you have seen it, you are not responding to a work, you're painting it yourself. And more often than not, that's when painting start to lose clarity. It's like trying not to when I'm working on something, even if I'm working several ways at the same time, uh, I'm focusing on that work and I'm trying to take it to a place. Painting is like I'm removing something, sort of a layer that was in front of painting. Once I'm confident that that has been removed, you have to stop. If you don't, if you keep erasing, what you do is to erase what you have done. So painting is about stopping. You have to make sure that you know everything for. If not, it's very hard to find.
I think sometimes that's really hard, and it's to have the confidence to just stop. And also, when you receive criticism, do you normally ask other people for their opinions for your work?
This is my wife.
That's a good one.
Yeah. Well, one of the main things, when you critique, to critique a work of art, it's not take. Uh, taste is important in other levels. I, I ask for an opinion because I just taste, but it down like taste is no trying to measure. Uh, I mean, it's hard. A painting is for you. The painting is getting sitting for. So you are doing something that you gotta know. You are the one who knows. It's like filling up an application and there are some people with information. You are the one that has the answer. But you have to know the answer. If you don't know it, next. Right now, so at the beginning of writing a book, I always you find yourself in that moment that you don't know it. And you have to find it. And you have to let the material speak. And there are many failures. Uh, for every painting you complete and you say, was that here? That painting owes a lot to several other people that they're making. Um, but when you have that first step, that's the most difficult thing. After that, it becomes extremely easy. But also, you have to, as an artist, make sure that you have your ideas clear because when I'm in the middle of a body of work, I have to think about all things. When I start to think about all the body of work, that's a signal that I may stop this. I won't include all ideas into this, but that's a signal that maybe it's enough. I've painted enough. That something else is starting to come to mind. Therefore, this is important. This is extreme act of conflict. Just think about it, what this means. Things are space that was language before you. For me, to think that this is important. All of my things are craziness. And then to put it in here, it has to be a little bit.
One of my favorite stories actually about confidence in art is Michelangelo and David. When Michelangelo was maybe you heard the story where Michelangelo was sculpting David, uh, there was an Italian statesman who was evaluating his work, just overseeing. His name was Cardoso, I think. Went to see the David as he was working on it and says, David, I love the David, but his nose is too big. So Michelangelo's like, okay. He went up with a little bit of the marble dust in his pocket and went with a chisel and slowly chiseled away the nose. But really, he didn't do it. He just let the marble dust fall, came down, and said, what do you think? He's like, it's perfect now. So all it is just, I love that story because all it is confidence. And you really don't have to argue with people about your work. Ultimately, there was a certain confidence in Michelangelo, who was extremely intentional with his work, knew that it wasn't perfection, that some parts of his body had to be bigger because he would see the David in the piazza and would be looking up at him. So that's why the proportions were off. But he had that confidence and says, no, I'm not changing it. And I love that story. It's pretty bad. This turning. level of confidence in your work.
I think that's something that you have to. We are doing something that doesn't have a function in society as a chair has. It's a thing. We don't know what it's for. Uh, we are paying it for. What art does in general uh, doesn't have to do with the everyday activity of object that we see everywhere. And I believe that painting is about the act of painting is about seeing that painting is something that should paralyze you somehow, it should experience just make you more body. That is what differentiate painting today from the millions of images that we see every day. You know, painting is something only to be consumed with your eyes. You have to also painting is a mirror. You know, would only be able to see in the painting when you're reading you. Painting is for alcohol. You won't answer the questions that you know the answers for. That's why you go to the painting and you may be able to recognize it, enjoy the reference if you know it, and that's why not in a way that may not be a landscape or soft floor. Those are the things that I mainly do is your experience is coming to the front of what's going on. And yeah, so if you're not prepared enough to encounter the landing, that encounter will make you prepared for the next. And it's, again, for me, it's not about taste. It's not about what we like and what I like. I don't paint what I like. I paint, you know, what I can and what I want to convey. And also, uh, painting is an object that has gone through a process of traditions and decisions and mistakes. And it has that similarity to a human life. You know, the things that is made in a short amount of time and we live longer. Yeah, I see it like that. And in my work specifically, the use of texture. Like when I started working with texture, I realized that it's all oil. I work with oil paint. I like how oil paint was dry in the surface right away, creating a skin similar to palms. But it would be dry in the inside. And I like this experiment of taking a painting of mine. You know, I'm doing this with a paint that is not yours. And coming with paint and walking the painting. And the painting would bleed because oil paint would let centuries of time. The painting is dry on the inside. And so that is there is movement with it surface and it is changing that we don't notice it. I have when I encounter a painting of my change some years ago, you notice that the painting has changed. I love that idea of a painting that needs, there's that poetic element to it. And it changes him. He has also the potential of changing you.
Plus, humor is the thing. You have a discarded thing.
I have broken his
That's
painting. I have broken his painting before. Yeah. Yeah. It's one words that I have wanted to use the stranger parts. I have some paintings don't survive. That's part of being in the studio.
What do you do?
With what? With the canvas, I throw it away.
That's it.
I have thrown it away. Later I have regretted because a lot of the work that I do is for lunch and I integrate textile in the amazing. Integrating painting from 5 years ago. This is how only happens in small things. People ain't go big like what you see here. Uh, the experimentation they tend to make is smaller format. Uh, it's harder for me to paint in smaller format. I'm used to the big format. I like the movement they have. Want to be able to move around. The small format of this painting right here, they are extremely delicate. There is no space on this thing. The last paintings allows you that you make a mistake, you can fix it, or you can just leave it like that, no one can notice. But it's one way to be peaceful right away. So if you're able to get it right, it's more painting, you're definitely, yeah.
That's all, right? So you throw away your work. And usually the answer is I the campus. That's what I on the campus.
I have fun, okay. What I have fun ways is small pieces that they are at the beginning of something, experiment that experimenting colors and how these textures moving. Studios like a laboratory, that's the painting material, sometimes things don't work. For example, when I started working with textile, uh, first I used glue, but it didn't work. Glue hides the union between things. And the stitches keeps the union invisible. So it wasn't all that. And also the stitches came with a conceptual point to the painting. It speaks about something that has been broken and, allows for the possibility of something being made and fixed as the break. And right away I realized that that has to do with identity, that has to do with exile. Uh, the material, I didn't was asking to be the painter. Glue, really in order to form like a small painting, like the little ones over here that I don't know completely. Yes. The rock paintings didn't work out. So those little experiments that I make with glue, they don't exist anymore.
You got these two smaller ones. There's something really sweet and intimate about that. What was your thought process in making those?
Well, those are that's the areas you want to create. Together with the painting, the red tree top, and the mother, the child on the hammock there. And those were mainly were created during my residency at the Museum of Art and Design, Miami College. And I'm I'm a new father. My daughter is 20 months old. And this is the center of my life. This is what is inspiring my work right now. And I have come to find this level of meaning, intensity, beauty in ordinary moments. The police call La Rosa del Mundo, the prose of the world. So this idea of the everyday rituals. I'm not able to provide this to impose poetry of the everyday activities. But I've been reading and approaching the work from a pedagogical point of view, which uh, argues that there is meaning in everyday activities already hidden in layers. We participate in rituals and things that they have a significant vibe to ourselves. Uh, and what I'm doing in the work is trying to reveal to reveal the poet that already lays there. The big thing moments of uh, this time in my life that is the most important that I have made so far. The inclusion of materials, the textile that have been part of our life. These are amazing photos that they have a significant to us. Uh, the painting over here, uh, what I did was I created a blanket, a picnic blanket, and this is the hospital blanket they give you. The painting is not over here, this one painting. In this one, that's the blanket my daughter came. That's what the doctor had and wrapped when she was home. And so they that with me, and I use it for the painting. Uh, and it is a fragment of a composition that I have painted before. It is an original carpet painting that was one of the original paintings that the fantasy carpet paintings that I made. Uh, we show in this gallery as part of this show. And I put a fragment of the paintings of a wife of legs and leg in my palm and put that on them. And this idea of our the possibility of our daughter being there years before. And honestly, it was like, for example, the mother and the child back there, uh, in the hammer, the ash painting on the rock is the same place with a few years different. The carpet painting is based on a photo of myself that we took 5 years ago. And then last year, we took my daughter to the same place where I took that photo from which I made that painting. And I made this new painting in, in the same space, with the style that I'm working now. So I like to revisit, those sometimes use and revisit compositions and photos that I have worked for, as I have a band of textiles that I use as my palette. I have also a lot of images that sometimes I reuse because I work from collage and I integrate in the new composition fragments of previous paintings and they go on colors. Yeah.
Turning well.
So two things. Right? So first way to I love the show, I love the work, man. It's great to hear you talk about the work. So when we're going on a little bit, there are a couple of conversations about some really interesting things that you're doing with the work. Uh, the importance of literature and reading another source, if you will, like ideas and inspiration. And I'm trying to remember the one you mentioned. There's a beautiful story that the Mexican author who is kind of tied to the story of your painting. And that idea of circling back, to visit something as soon as it goes from elevates, and how it becomes a perfection. That aspect of experience, right? And you hold on to memory, it's different, that piece that's there. So those are really wonderful things that especially for young artists who have some face here, visiting professor here. And I think it's good for them to hear also how you make these connections. You have work as personal, but you also draw inspiration from sources, historical sources, literature, and other places. Arts are integrated in each other. So that's like a multi-part question. Kind of thing. And the other one is, like we talked about, share your painting with us, painting with us. So the importance of understanding that painting is within history and time and paintings. And so when you're working contemporary, you're still part of this continuous conversation. So the work that we have today, that there is a line in the language and the vocabulary material that presents itself. It's an internal, it's the thing to get the details. So those are two kind of commentaries and then you can jump off of that. Talk about that.
I mentioned that record first. I even spoke to you that day. I mentioned uh, Pedro Caro. Pedro Caro is another uncle. And the story is about a guy that returns to the place where his father is from after his mother has passed away. He doesn't know the father. He's going back to his place because his mother told him to go back and look for his father. Yeah. It's, yo recomiendo el book to very Instagram book. Good for them to write. He wrote a few books and he won a Nobel Prize. And sometimes he was asked why when you write more, he said, I have a job. And he was a sniper in the literary sense. Not a lot, but extreme quality. In the book is the images that you're painting, I recommend is an album. The images that you read there are amazing. And so he's going back to this place. At some point, he realized everybody's there. Well, he suspects that people are there in that space. And the interaction that he's having, it happened to be the first time I went to Cuba. For you return to a place that, in my case, we were extremely happy. He didn't know this the way that he was going on to in the book. But he had that idea because his mother told him. And then he arrived to this place, and the interactions and the peoples and the landscape, everything seems like it is made up. And that is another thing that appeals to my paintings. I try to create these spaces that don't exist. And when you pay attention, you realize that this is wrong. The horizon should be there. There are errors as in David Michelangelo's of proportion in the hand, for example, of the Michelangelo of the David. Then, yeah, so it's a notion of memory, how the modern had this idea of that space, and he has to walk to life based on the memories of his mother, right? And it has nothing to do with the reality of the space. The space is the prior of all human what everybody left. The space has no humanity. People are either dead or they seem to be dead. There is something wrong with that space. And you only realize, in my case, of a situation like that, what you have left is similar to this, to living uh, the cave in Plato's allegory of the cave. You have somebody that is out of the cave, and you go out and you see the light, and you for the first time see things as they are, as shadows or as they are. So in this case, going back to Cuba for me was seeing things as shadows, ideas that were the center of our life. The center of our life were just undermining of things. They were not real. Uh, Also, the case as I managed, people don't have to. I was not aware. You look after 5 years, and half of the people are not there. Then the space becomes this desert. I, there is an idea that appears in German Ryan edition that it says that the desert is growing. So that idea of the desert space that is already empty, so there is a growing of the emptiness that kills me when I went back home and analyze that. And the memory of my little kids, they go too fast. When you're at the day, you go from pain level. Next time I saw my friend, it's not that way. At that point, you went from being a kid in 12, and all of a sudden it was almost 18. It was a man already. The 18 spike of being people, that part of the shadow. I, I'm sure that if I had been there, it might have been growing up at the same time. Because something really, I didn't have it. And so that's the idea of memory, how accessible memory is, how reliable it is. Can you access how much can you access of all other people's memory? Because one of the things that is certainly my practice is language. Because I live it, you know, I I have to accent in a different language. But even if we speak the same language, you remember in the own language because that's your life experience. And how much access can we have to the language that we as people we don't know because it's too long. And he has to go also with the idea that what's happening in the book. Um, in reference to painting, I mentioned some point of the heritage of religion is central. As a painter today, as a figurative painter, even as an abstract painter, whatever you do, painting, we have at least 600 years for painting. So as a contemporary artist, we have the responsibility of at least know uh, what has been done before. Because one of the greatest, we spoke before about failure, but one of the things about failure is that you have to know your failure. You have to recognize it. Uh, uh, there is also a case of believing that you have discovered something that has been done before. That's one of the greatest failures. And that is a failure in your knowledge, failure like that. You didn't even know you're supposed to. So one of the things that I do, I think is whenever I come with an idea, I try to research. Has this been done before? Because if it has, I continue to make it. I have the responsibility of pointing to those who paved the way for me to what has happened before. And it is almost impossible not to be walking in the same path as another painter. If you're a painter today, we as a contemporary painter, I, it's my opinion, the most we can do is to rearrange what's been done. Creation, so you know, our far from our hands are exploring history, and nothing come ex nihilo when there is no the idea of creating a photo. There is always a reference and the series of I have told you before. And as a painter today, we have the responsibility of knowing. For example, in this work, in this exhibition, you have this painting. When I saw that photo and I saw the tree, wow, reality of the power tree. But I don't know, there is a Pierre Bonnard. Pierre Bonnard is a French painter, late 19th century, early 20th century, interior, domestic scenes, beautiful, very delicate. And I thought of a painting of him that it is a reference to a painting of Paul Bonnard. So you already have an artist in the early 20th century, late 19th century, that referencing another artist that was influential and central for him to develop his practice. And if we go back to the whole Renaissance, it was a revival of Greek art. And like, there is an awareness of what you are doing using that because something had done before. And that's we were talking about the importance of knowing uh, our history. Uh, in this case, no, not repeating, repeating knowledge.
Any other questions?
It's not really a question, but it's an observation. So one of the things I like so much about your work is that you entice the viewer, you enamor the viewer by your rich textures, your rich colors, by uh, this just juicy, wonderful paintings. But at the end of the day, what really brings me as a viewer, and I think a lot of people as a viewer, is the intimacy that you invite us into. You know, whether it's your friends or your family or the intimacy of the moment. So I think all of us have experienced similar intimacies to a beautiful day, especially in South Florida, in the water, where everything's perfect. It's $1 million day, and you're at the people in it are relaxed and just happy, but just happy to be relaxed and doing nothing. And that's a very intimate moment. And we all can identify with that. And we can all identify like with this, it's like he's just enjoying the laziness, enjoying the, whatever he's thinking. We've all been in places where we had a wonderful just half an hour a day or a week or whatever, or weekend. And we don't really remember all the details, but we remember the sense of well-being that this man has. And, the love of a mother for her child. And who hasn't seen this image before? But you bring us into your intimacy. I think that's a very special thing that you do. So thank you for it because I really enjoyed that
And
part.
I love that comment because that is common ground. It's these overlooked moments that we all can relate to, that we've all experienced. And they're all here. And to me, William's work is this breath of fresh air in a time where we can't seem to put our phones down. Um, I don't have a love-hate relationship with social media, but something that I love is if you have these moments. And I think what's beautiful is that's what it speaks to everyone, to the audience. And no matter what the backstory is, and why William's doing what he's doing, you could just sit back and look closer and enjoy something that's beautiful. I don't think that's a bad word in regards to art. I love beauty on the streets. So just having these beautiful paintings surrounded me every day, I've really enjoyed having them here. So thank you.
First thing, one more thing. Uh, in the last century, painting has been pronounced dead all of times.
Yes.
In today's day that we are exposed to endless images, I think it's, should people like that, uh, painting in violent to stop and sit, and it's still there 15 seconds later. And like I mentioned before, I believe that a painting has to, as mindset, it, uh, it's become a place to tell the viewer what to do with the work or what to feel. But I do hope that if the work has in created in the viewer the necessity of paying more attention to things in life, uh, to those overlooks moment, yes, those minutes. And be from the painting, look at the painting, and then go out there and they see how many potential paintings you encounter in the everyday life. That's how we walk to life as an artist. Because, some point, you start to, you see a painting everywhere, you have to make a decision which one to make. But it is a great superpower if you start to enjoy it. You look at things and to see the beauty of a tree, the beauty of a moment, of the potential meanings that gestures and things have in everyday life. So, yeah, painting is alive and simply healthy. I believe. Thank you all for coming.
Thank you so much.